Myths and misconceptions in the automotive world. We have no shortage of myths and misconceptions, regardless of what brand, make, or model vehicle we might be discussing. Today, we're going to talk about 5 big myths in the world of Subaru. Lurking around those internet forums, floating around in YouTube videos, and everywhere in between, we're going to try to take away the fact from the fiction and see what is true and what is just a bunch of hot air. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. Starting off our list with myth number 1, all Subarus have head gasket issues. Yep, these guys, we're talking about it once again. Anytime you hear the Subaru name, you're gonna hear head gasket, whether it's in the same breath or the one preceding it. Everyone that hears about Subaru has heard about the head gasket issues at this point, and everyone is ingrained, it seems, to think that every single Subaru has an inherent flaw with their head gaskets, and that's simply not the truth. It is absolutely a myth. We've talked about this many, many times in the past on the channel. The root of the every Subaru has a head gasket problem myth came about with the head gasket issues of the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter EJ series engine. In 1997, they came out with the EJ25D, which is a dual overhead cam version of the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter EJ series engine, and they suffered from head gasket failures. They would fail internally where coolant would get into the combustion chamber and burn, causing overheating. Later, on the design of the EJ251, where they went from a dual overhead cam setup to a single overhead cam setup, the head gasket issues shifted a little bit. Instead of it being an internal failure that caused overheating and coolant to go into the combustion chambers, the issue was an external leak. So you'd have oil and coolant both leaking, or one or the other, externally between the parting line of the cylinder head and the block half. So if you got under the car to do an oil change and looked up where the heads met the block halves, you'd see grunge, you'd see oil or coolant leaking, seeping, or stuck to that parting line at the very bottom of the head gasket. Now, these issues are long past and have been alleviated for at least a decade at this point. When Subaru shifted to the F series of engine with the FA and FB series, the head gasket issues were no longer an issue. Also, during the same time period, from 97 to roughly 2010 to 2012, when we had head gasket issues on the 2.5, that was literally the only engine in the series from Subaru that was affected. Subaru's had many, many engines, and only that one series of engine had the head gasket issues as an inherent flaw, which came down to it being a single layer coated gasket with a graphite coating that broke down over time and caused the leakage. The Subaru STI and WRX with the 2 liter and 2.5 liter turbocharged engines never had head gasket issues as a rule. There was no fault with the head gasket material. Those failed due to abuse, neglect, or modification. Now, the EJ18 we had in the USA, the 1.8 liter, the EJ22, the 2.2 liter, the EG33, EZ30, EZ36 never had these head gasket issues as a blanketed rule across the series of engine. Now, Subaru has gotten painted as always having head gasket issues due to a fatal flaw in one series of engine. So, myth totally busted. All Subarus do not have head gasket issues. Subaru myth number 2, Subarus are not reliable. Now, this is absolutely false. It's an absolute myth, just like the others on the list we're going to cover today. Now, a lot of people say that Subarus are not reliable and they are very bad vehicles to own, or they cost a lot of money due to breakdowns and reliability issues. In my personal experience and the experience of other Subaru owners, that's simply not true. I currently own several Subaru vehicles at or above 200,000 miles. I even have a couple at or above 300,000 miles on original engines and original transmissions. A lot of the times with Subaru and other brands of cars, it's all about the maintenance, how the car is taken care of, how it is treated, how it is maintained, and how it is driven. If you drive a car heavy, hard, and do not maintain it and do not do maintenance, you will have more reliability issues and breakdowns than someone that does the proper maintenance and cares for their vehicle. It doesn't matter what brand the vehicle is. Every car has the potential to be good. Every car has the potential to be horrible. Unless you got a Kia or a Hyundai, then your engine's just going to blow up anyway. Joke. But it doesn't matter really at the end of the day what brand you have, whether it be a Subaru, a Toyota, a Honda, a Chevrolet, a Ford, or a Dodge. A lot of it comes down to how it's cared for, how it's maintained, how it's driven, more so than what the badge is or what the emblem is on the front of the car. There's no excuse saying that Subarus are not reliable. Again, a lot of people give me a lot of grief for this, but a lot of times the reliability of your vehicle relies on you. So again, from personal experience, from customer vehicles and the experience with those people, and just in general, Subarus are as reliable as anything else on the road, or maybe a little bit better than the medium average. So myth number 2, Subarus are not reliable. Totally busted. Subaru myth number 3, Subarus are only for snow and off-roading. Now this one I hear quite a lot, especially in the comment section of my YouTube channel here. Being that I am in South Carolina, I'm in the Southeast, I almost never see snow or a lot of inclement weather, and people always ask me, why in the world did you pick Subaru? Why do you have Subaru vehicles if you don't live in the Northeast or somewhere that gets a lot of snow or a lot of rainfall, or, you know, are dealing with off-roading and muddy conditions, things like that? What in the world would you go Subaru for? They're really just for up north when you're dealing with snow and bad weather. And that's simply not true. Subarus are just as good on-road as they are off-road. They give you lots of comfortable driving on the highway, but they also give you extra safety and handling characteristics of having that all-wheel drive system. Say you need to avoid an obstacle abruptly in the middle of the highway. That all-wheel drive traction is going to make it more stable to steer around at speed than a front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive vehicle. Also considering if you're driving down the highway and you hit a sudden downpour of rain, Subaru's all-wheel drive system is safer, handles better, and grips better in a torrential downpour or other inclement weather other than just snow or going off-road. Subaru also has that phenomenal grip, as I said, of the all-wheel drive in the WRX and STI. So people that are motorsports enthusiasts or drag race their Subaru, you have that extra grip of the all-wheel drive compared to your front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive competitors. So there is an advantage to having an all-wheel drive system. But at the end of the day, I look at it this way. Subaru's all-wheel drive system is one of those things I'd rather have and not need than need and not have. There's been several times we've been caught here in the Southeast with our pants down metaphorically, where we've gotten massive snowfall, and I can go out and do what I want just perfectly fine in my Subaru, where other people are struggling and off in a ditch somewhere because we're not used to it down here. So I would rather have it than not need it and not have it. Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive is phenomenal, and Subarus are not just for snow and off-roading. Myth totally busted. On to myth number 4, Subarus are expensive to own and maintain. And again, totally do not agree with this. You hear it all the time talking to people about Subarus or looking at internet forums or consumer reports where people say that Subarus are super expensive to own, parts are expensive, labor's expensive, etc., etc. That's simply not true either, as a rule that I've seen elsewhere. Now, one of the reasons I drive a Subaru here in the Southeast, again, where I don't need it because we don't get snowfall, and you know, that's one of the main selling points of a Subaru, is because Subarus are just very reliable and very cheap, in my opinion. Parts are pretty fairly priced compared to a lot of other manufacturers, mainly because of the interchangeability of parts along all of the Subaru models. Basically, one Subaru has 90-something% of the parts of any other Subaru. I know that's exaggeration as far as body panels and shape and all that goes, but looking at like the nuts and bolts stuff, like in the driveline, in the transmission, engine, all of that stuff, most of it is interchangeable throughout the entire model lineup, whether it's an Impreza, a Forester, a Crosstrek, an Outback, a Legacy, an Ascent, etc. There's lots of interchangeability and lots of shared parts, mainly because Subaru is a small company and they don't have a lot of money to R&D and make all these different things for different models. So there's a lot of stuff shared to save money on that, and it makes the parts pricing cheaper because it's shared across lots of different models instead of being proprietary to just a Crosstrek or just an Outback. So the parts are, on a whole, as an average compared to other manufacturers, in my experience, cheaper. Now, maintenance and labor. As far as general maintenance goes, these cars are super easy to maintain and do yourself. Oil changes, servicing fluids, things like that. They're super easy to get at. Spark plugs are a little bit challenging, especially if you've done them before, but they're very easy once you have the proper tools and have done it in the past, or, you know, gotten yourself onto YouTube and watched one of my videos to help you get to that repair. And while you're doing your own maintenance and service on your Subaru, be sure to check out SubaruPartsDeals.com for the best pricing on Subaru genuine parts. If you're going to work on your Subaru, always use Subaru genuine parts. The aftermarket stuff just isn't up to snuff. But on a whole, Subaru is probably one of the easiest cars to maintain yourself as an owner compared to others on the road. Now, I know labor costs are high for things like an engine reseal or cam carrier leak or something going into the engine or something with the CVT, but those big time failures are not that big across the product line, especially when you're doing that maintenance and doing that stuff to properly care for the car to make sure it doesn't get to the point where those big repairs are needed. So as far as being super expensive to own and maintain, I think that myth is totally busted. On to myth number 5, which is probably the funniest one here, and that is that all Subarus are slow. Now, of course, this already we know is a total myth because we know that the STI and the WRX exist. Now, again, we know the STI is currently out of production. It might come back, it might not, but we can't, as a blanket statement, say that all Subarus are slow. Now, I know if you go out and get an Impreza 2-liter or a Crosstrek 2-liter with a whopping 145 horsepower, a lot of people complain about the power output and that they're slow to accelerate and they're not easy to live with. But that's coming from a guy that's owned a 40 horsepower K-truck that I drove on the highways in America and had no complaints about the power. But I've also had really high horsepower vehicles as well in the past. So to say all Subarus are slow is an exaggeration. Now, if you're looking at the average median model that most consumers pick up, say your grandmother's Forester or your sister's Outback, you know, they're not going to go out there and compete with a Camaro or a Corvette or something of that caliber, but, you know, they're not a slug either. They are perfectly adequately horsepower proportion to what the vehicle is and what it's used for, in my opinion. If you want some more speed, go for that WRX, go for that STI, or for a BRZ, even though a lot of people say they're underpowered. They're super fun cars and absolutely loved mine. Now, as far as the speed and power and slowness is concerned, there's tons of aftermarket support for the STI, for the WRX, for the turbocharged models. You can always spring for now a turbo on your Legacy, your Outback, or your Ascent, although the Ascent only comes in a turbocharged option. But again, Subaru does add more power, and there's usually an option for a bigger engine, like with the Crosstrek. You can now get a 2.5 instead of a 2-liter, so if you want a little bit bump in horsepower. But to say all Subarus are slow as a blanket statement just isn't true, especially when there's WRXs and STIs like these. You can make anything fast with enough time and money. It's just how much time and money do you want to put in for how much speed and power do you want. So at the end of the day, nope, all Subarus are not slow. Myth number 5, totally busted. So guys, that brings us to the end of today's myth busting section. Hopefully this clears up some of those misconceptions and myths you've heard about the Subaru brand and puts you at ease, especially for those thinking about buying a Subaru in the future and those that already own one currently. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more Subaru content in the future, and drop a comment down below if you have any myths you'd like me to investigate or talk about. And also, just if there's any myths you've heard that I didn't mention in today's video, drop them down below. Let me hear about them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all in the next one.